downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanick.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's another Buckeye Leafcast with your hosts. I am Andy Evans, rocking the other side of the microphone, a guy that transcends time and space. He's all over the place. He is the intergalactic Buckeye fan. Of course, I'm talking about the one and only Mr. Chris Stefanick.
Oh, my God. That was...
Mr. Stefanick.
Wow.
Are you
Yes,
on
sir.
Cloud 9 today or what?
I got a little extra skip in my step, I'd have to say.
Little extra skip to your loo.
A little twinkle in my eye.
Well, let me tell you what, Chris. After last night's unbelievable comeback win by the 6th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, taking on the previously undefeated 2nd-ranked Penn State Nittany Lions in the Horseshoe, final score, Buckeyes 39, Nittany Lions 38. And Chris, I'm just gonna put it out there. I currently have a big fat plate of crow sitting before me, okay? And I'm going to be eating this big fat plate of crow while we do this podcast because I said and have said throughout the season excuse me, let's try that again. I have said throughout the season that JT Barrett is not a guy you can rely on to sit in the pocket and throw. He's not a pocket passing quarterback. For Ohio State to rely on Joseph Thomas Barrett IV to sit in the pocket, be a pocket passing quarterback, and win football games is not something that Kevin Wilson and Urban Meyer should ask of him to do. And boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong about JT Barrett's performance last night, Chris, that I'm just going to chow down on this big fat plate of crow while you talk about that guy's performance last night and what he did to bring Ohio State back from the depths of defeat to pull off an unbelievable victory. And real quick, I'm going to spit the stats, and then I'm going to shut up for a few minutes, and I'm going to let you talk and just everything that you saw out of that performance last night. Not only JT Barrett, but just everything about the game. I know you're going to come with it because you love to break things down. That's what I love from you. You're gonna give me that insight and give everybody else out there that insight that we need when it comes to Ohio State football. But JT, 33 of 39, Chris, for the game, 328 yards through the air, 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions. He also led the team on the ground with 17 carries, almost hit 100 yards with 95. Collectively, the Buckeyes ran for 201. And once again, JT Barrett, unbelievable, especially in that fourth quarter. So, like I said, I'm going to shut up. I want to hear what you have to say, and while you talk, I'm going to go ahead and munch a little bit of this crow.
Yeah, I mean, JT, that was a performance for the ages. I mean, that honestly, there's people saying he's the front runner for the Heisman right now. I mean, and who would have thought that after the Oklahoma game? I mean, people were calling for him to be benched. So, I mean, even in these games where he's turned it around since the Oklahoma game, people have been calling him for to be benched because they're like, well, he's doing it against nobody, so it doesn't count. And now, I mean, you're talking about a guy who may be the front runner for the Heisman. And I'm telling you, if he plays like that the rest of the season, he's going to get it.
Oh, are you kidding me? That was without a doubt a Heisman Trophy winning performance. That game right there could be the game that if he gets a ticket and he's sitting there in New York for the presentation, that could be the game that everybody looks back on and says this was the game that separated him from everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, 33 for 39, and there was 4 drops in the game. So, I mean, that's about as close to perfect as you're going to get. 37 for 39. I mean, unbelievable. You know, and then when the game mattered, closing out that fourth quarter, he closes the game with 16 completions in a row. You know, he had 3 TDs in the fourth quarter as Ohio State outscored Penn State 19-3 in the fourth quarter to turn that game around. I mean, just unbelievable. He also with that touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin He at that point set a new record for touchdown passes, career touchdown passes in the Big Ten, passing Drew Brees' Big Ten record. So, there's still several games to go. I think he, he's going to push that one out quite a ways. You'd have to think at this point, it was spectacular. It's JT's performance was great. The Buckeyes as a whole, offensively and defensively, they were pretty close to dominant. It was really just special teams and some mistakes that was the only reason why on the scoreboard it was close. So it's like if I would have told you, Andy, before the game that OSU would almost double up Penn State in total yardage, that they'd get 10 more first downs, that JT would go 33 for 39 passing, that Saquon Barkley, Heisman frontrunner coming into the game anyway, would be held to 2.1 yards per carry. You would think that Ohio State won going away. It right there tells you if you look at the stats, the offense and the defense both played phenomenal, and we can get down to in a little bit here why that wasn't reflected on the scoreboard so much. Right. But both offensively and defensively, it was notably better than the opponent. So, and if you remember last year, Ohio State was notably better and was dominating the whole game. Well, maybe not dominating isn't the right word, but looked like the better team the whole game and leading the whole game last year. Yeah. And if it wasn't for a freak play in the middle of a monsoon, that punt block, return for a touchdown. Yep. They'd won last year too. So it's coming into the game, I was like, man, Penn State's really moved. James Franklin's got that program on equal footing with Ohio State, and
absolutely.
And but I don't know. I think that there's still a talent gap, and and any given Saturday they could hang in there. And it was everything. They gave Ohio State everything they wanted and more. But granted you say if, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but if they could clean up some of these mistakes in the special teams, I think there's a notable gap between those two teams. So what were your thoughts?
10 penalties yesterday for, what? Let me see if I can find the stat here. Here we go. 10 penalties for 79 yards. You mentioned the just the special teams and just the overall mistakes. Ohio State came into that game averaging a little over 7 penalties a game for a little over 74 yards a game, which is the worst in the Big Ten. They are the most penalized team in the Big Ten. They obviously surpassed their average yesterday with 10 penalties for 79 yards. For them to have won that game despite committing that many mistakes is amazing. And that was one of the things, Chris, that I had said on my pregame preview, that Ohio State cannot commit as many mistakes as they have throughout the year and expect to win the football game. Yeah. And Penn State, though, they had just about as many mistakes, 9 penalties for 73 yards. So both teams were penalized quite a bit.
Their special teams were not a clown show, though. Seriously, Andy, think about this. Here's an interesting question for you. At any level of football above high school, so I guess college and professional, has any team you've ever followed had worse special teams than your 2017 Ohio State Buckeyes?
It's funny. Special teams is not really an area that you necessarily key on when you're watching a team play. But when it gets so bad that it starts to stick out in your mind, then you start to think, okay, there's a problem here. If I'm really intently watching the special teams play to see how they do, then yeah, there's a problem here. And quite frankly, special teams, they were always a specialty for a one Jimmy Tressel. Special teams were his specialty. That's what he took pride in. And man, there were punters that could just absolutely coffin corner a punt, which, hey, we got a good one in Drew Chrisman. And he had I think we do.
He had that. Well, he's had several gaffes this year, including yesterday. So that one, the snap hits him in the hands, he bobbles it, and then that threw off his timing, and he shanks it to the side of the field. And
I think that punt could have ended up a lot worse than it did, though.
Well,
quite
that's
frankly,
true.
I thought
That's
he
true.
recovered well.
Okay, go on.
But yeah, is there an issue with the special teams for Ohio State right now? Yes. Kerry Combs and Urban Meyer are the two coaches that are in charge of the special teams, and it doesn't look like they probably put too much time and effort into strengthening the special teams play. Of course, the big special teams gaffe yesterday was Saquon Barkley taking the opening kickoff 97 yards for a game-opening touchdown. I mean, when that happened, Chris, dude, the air just came right out of the stadium.
Right.
And I mean to tell you, oh, goodness gracious. I mean, Buckeye Nation, when he did that, I was like, here we go. The route is on. Penn State is about to clobber and clean Ohio State's clock. I really did. I thought that. I was like, they're screwed. Ohio State is screwed. They just gave up a game-opening kickoff return for a touchdown to Saquon Barkley, something we knew that he was capable of because he had done it previously in the year. We knew that this guy was dangerous, and yet they still kick to him, and he does what he does. And I was shaking my head. But by the end of the game, they got him figured out. They had him figured out in all facets. On the ground, special teams. Of course, there were several kickoffs that they were kicking away from him and pooching. And some of those decisions I was shaking my head at. One in particular is a squib kick that Penn State takes over at the 40-yard line late in the game when you're still down by 5 points. And you're thinking, what the hell are you doing? Why are you giving them a short field? But they didn't want to kick off to Saquon Barkley because he was that dangerous still. Although they did end up kicking off to him after they took the lead, and they were able to bottle him up on that last kickoff return. So that's – but I honestly –
No, I thought that's one – the last kickoff was a squib. The guy stopped it at the 40 frickin' yard line, and I'm sitting there thinking they're 30 yards away from field goal range, and we're only up by 1 point.
Did I get that confused?
Yeah, it was the last one was the squib where they got at the 40-yard line. Okay. I'm like, oh, my God, they've got a minute and 40 seconds, 3 timeouts, and they only need to go 30 yards to get in field goal range.
Okay,
but
they
didn't give up.
You're right.
It was a 4 and out. They didn't give up a first down, so the defense really stepped up and they pressured McSorley like they did the whole game. So
let's talk about the defense, dude. I mean, this was a Penn State offense that was right behind Ohio State in a lot of the stats. Second-ranked overall offense in the conference. They were second-ranked passing offense. I mean, Trace McSorley, he was looking very Baker Mayfield-esque at times during that game, scrambling, some third and longs. There was that one third and long. He scrambles for a first down, and that's when Ohio State's trying to come back, and they're chipping away a little bit, and he had that crazy run there late in the game for a first down. But for what they did, dude, I mean, 38 points, and you think, that's not a great defensive effort. But like you said, the score not necessarily indicative of how well the defense played. I mean, what did you see?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, you got to realize 21 points out of that was basically not on the defense. The kickoff obviously has nothing to do with the defense.
Sure.
But then Paris Campbell fumbles, and it's returned to the 8-yard line. I mean, they needed 8 yards to get a touchdown for that second one, right? So that's not on the defense. And then, again, the special teams, they did that one kickoff. I mean, it's bad when some white guy returns it like 60 yards, like the white second-string middle linebacker returns it 60 yards to give the other team, the ball at the 20-yard line. So they had that one at the 20-yard line.
A linebacker returning a squib kickoff 59 yards was once again special teams gap. You just shake your head and you're like, oh my God, here we go.
Yeah. So I mean, it's that right there. 21 of those points. So if you take instead of 38, it's more like they gave up 27. So 27. I mean, in modern football now, when we were kids, or heck, even just like maybe 10 or 15 years ago when we were still young men. The 27 points would have meant a little more, but in modern football, 27 points, that's it's not doing a great job on defense, but it's doing. You did enough to win the game. If you hold the opposing team to 20, because you expect your offense to get 30 points.
Well, and especially when you're playing a team like Penn State.
Right. So 27 points, and then that they held them to like 280 yards total. I mean, McSorley, like we said, or rather, Saquon Barkley held a 2.1 yards per carry. I mean, that's ridiculous for the Heisman frontrunner. This guy who people were saying, oh, he's even better than Ezekiel Elliott. Not so sure about that anymore, fellas. Might want to hold off on that. And then McSorley, the guy who's been able to keep opposing defenses from stacking the box, allowing Saquon Barkley to have these great numbers. He's held to 192 yards on just 17 to 29 throwing.
Yeah.
17 to 29 versus 33 for 39. Look at that. I mean, the only reason that their offense really was able to do anything at all, is like you said, was due to some of the scrambles that McSorley was able to do. So, and this is one thing I had a little bit of a bone to pick with. So the defensive line looked great, was shutting down Barkley, and was pressuring McSorley the whole game. But it's like if McSorley just stepped up in the pocket, got past that initial rush and stepped up in the pocket, it's like wide open grass field in front of him. I mean, that's got to be some flaw in the scheme there. You know what I mean? I'm like, this guy could run, that he was like a Baker Mayfield-esque. I mean, it wasn't just Saturday he was Baker Mayfield-esque. He's been like that all season. This is a guy who can make some magic happen with his legs. I'm just not sure how you let that happen. Now, I mean, I guess you got to give them something, and in exchange for that, they had good pass rush and they had good coverage on the receivers. I mean, the coverage downfield was pretty good. I mean, the Penn State receivers made some nice plays on some where you just had to tip their hat to them and say, hey, what are you going to do? Or like some of those, like Gesicki, this 6'6" athletic freak. You just, if the ball is thrown high and on target, it doesn't matter how good a coverage you have, you can't stop it. So it's like you just tip your hat, and say, well, you've got a freak athlete that is a mismatch. There's nothing we can do there, and that's kind of what it was like. So I mean, maybe you just say, hey, you can't take away everything. You got to give them something, and that's what they gave them. And I guess I can live with that. But Hubbard, I mean, what a game by Hubbard. My favorite play of the game, maybe my favorite play of the season, is when, like, fourth quarter, there's 3 minutes left. It's I think it was third down, and McSorley is deciding whether he wants to. He's doing his own read option, and he's like, do I hand it off to Barkley or do I take it? And he was waiting for like Hubbard to make a decision before handing it off, and Hubbard's like, all right, I'll just tackle both of you. And Bear hug and brought them both to the ground. I was like, oh my God, this is like the best defensive play since when Joey Bosa drove the fullback into the quarterback in overtime versus Penn State, a couple years ago. I'm like, oh my God, what a phenomenal highlight.
Yes, Yeah, there's already a meme out there with Sam. It's like, something to that. Yeah, something to that effect. I had a buddy, show it to me last night. I said, dude, you got to send that to me. That's great. Yeah, show it. I mean, someone got a great picture of Hubbard tackling both guys at once.
Yeah, hugs from Ohio State. Yeah,
that was an unbelievable play of the game. Sam Hubbard, just a great game from him. I mean, 4 tackles. 1.5 for loss. Jerome Baker had a game, man. 7 tackles. Yeah. He had half for loss. Jordan Fuller led the team with 9 tackles, 8 solo, 1 for loss. Dante Booker and Chris Worley both had good games, both 5 tackles apiece, 1 for loss. Worley with a pass breakup. So, I mean, just all around great effort, great defensive effort. 13 tackles for loss total. By the Buckeyes last night, and Penn State only with 6. I mean, this was a Penn State defense, Chris, that was, the number 1 passing efficiency defense in the country. They were the number 1 scoring defense in the country, only allowing a little over 9 points a game. So I was honestly kind of scared that Ohio State would not be able to honestly do this offensively against such a staunch Penn State defense. And a lot of people said, well, dude, who have they played? They have taken on terrible offenses all year long, and that's the reason why their stats look so good. Wait until they play the Buckeyes. And I said, well, you know what? Yeah, that's true. They have not faced an offense like Ohio State, but you're still putting up those kinds of numbers even against the little sisters of the poor. You're playing some good football there. And just offensively, defensively, unbelievable on both sides of the ball for Ohio State. But, much like the Oklahoma game, they got down, they got punched in the mouth early. And, well, I guess not really like Oklahoma. Oklahoma was first half back and forth battle, whereas Penn State, they came out and they punched Ohio State in the mouth. And I was talking with a guy before the game, and he said, I want to see what happens if Penn State comes out and punches Ohio State in the mouth early. He was like, I'm not so sure that Ohio State can come back. And I said, you know what? I think they can. I think they have it in them if they get hit in the mouth early, because Urban Meyer works best with his back against the wall, and you push Baby in the corner, and he's going to come out swinging, baby. He is going to come out fighting. I mean, nobody puts Baby in the corner. You put Urban in the corner, buddy, you better get ready for him to come out swinging and fighting and tooth and nail. And I said, I really think that Ohio State almost works better when people are not giving them the benefit of the doubt. And that's what happened yesterday, Chris. That's exactly what happened. But this defense, like you said, to hold Saquon Barkley on the ground, 44 yards on 21 carries. Yeah. I mean, he did end up having that 36-yard touchdown. But, dude, you take away those two huge plays by Barkley, the kickoff return and the 36-yard touchdown, I mean, they shut him down. He caught 4 passes for a total of 23 yards yesterday. Defense played out of their mind, especially there late in the game. Yeah,
and you're also not including they had 2 interceptions in the end zone that were overturned.
Thank you.
That both led to 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, it's like right there. When was the last time you saw a game where 2 interceptions in the end zone were overturned versus the same team? It's like if those are interceptions and not touchdowns, then that's really, that 27 points they gave up is more like 13 now. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at that. I'm like, are the refs on the take here? Because, okay, the one from Denzel Ward, where it was, if you look at the replay, it's one of those where there wasn't enough evidence either way. Like, if they would have called it a touchdown on the field and it went to replay and they kept it a touchdown, I'd have been like, hey, that's fine. What can you do? There wasn't enough evidence. If they would have called it a interception on the field, though, I'm like, hey, there's nothing there to overturn it. It's like, I just don't see how there was evidence there to overturn it. That's crazy. But anyway, I don't want to sit here and harp on it too much.
I will say that no, and I will say this. When it happened on the field, and I mean, those two are just fighting, jostling, and you can tell that Denzel Ward's trying to rip it out of Tompkins' hands, and Tompkins is trying to keep the ball, and then the ref runs over. He's looking, he's trying to. It was like a wrestling match, when the ref's kind of running around, looking, trying to see if the guy's shoulders pinned down. It was like that. The ref's kind of looking around, trying to see who's got the ball, who's got it. Denzel Ward's got it. Place goes nuts. Upon the review, though, I will say that it did, to me, it looked like that Tompkins actually did possess the ball first, and Ward was able to kind of rip it out. I mean, it was like Tompkins had it first for a split second, then Ward, got his arms around the ball as well, and then the wrestling match began. So I will say upon review, was there enough evidence to overturn it? I don't think that the evidence was overwhelmingly in favor of Tompkins on that play. However, I think it was just enough for them to have overturned it and to make the call that they did. But the other interception in the end zone, I was watching that play from the start, and I was watching Arnett and who was it? I can't remember the receiver that he was covering. I think it might have been Hamilton, all the way down the field. And in today's day and age, dude, hand checking goes on all the time. You know what I'm saying? They're always slapping at each other as they're running down the field. And, you know, the defensive back gets his hand in there. He's trying to kind of, you know, feel where the receiver's at, and the receiver's slapping his hand away. That kind of stuff happens. Hand checking goes on all the time now. And there was nothing egregious about Damon Arnett's coverage to have warranted a pass interference. And I mean, I'm not saying that because I'm a Buckeye fan. I'm saying that because that's really what I saw. I did not see anything overwhelming as far as Damon Arnett committing that pass interference. I thought it was a clean play.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I hear you, man. It, you know, hats off. How about hats off? Hats off.
Yeah, either or.
Hats off to the coaches for like.
Hands off. Hands off, coaches.
Hands off, coaches. Do not put your hands there.
Hands off.
The pass coverage was pretty abysmal at the start of the year, and it's still not like it was last year. You know, when they had Lattimore and what's his name?
Gary and Conley.
I mean, those guys were like two stud lockdown corners, but it's gotten notably better. I mean, they've really turned it up. And, you know, honestly, the three areas where the team, you know, was weak outside of kick coverage, it was pass coverage. They shored that up.
Yeah.
Pass protection. They shored that up. I mean, JT had all day back there. And the downfield passing, and they've been doing the downfield passing has been working. The coaches really turned things around, you know, and I've got to hand it to them for making it happen during the season. You know, it's tough to get big improvements during the season. During the off seasons where you get the big jumps, you get like small improvements during the season typically, but not big improvements. But it looks like a pretty big improvement to me. I mean, I think Penn State has a better defense than Oklahoma, but yet they were giving JT all day back there to throw.
Let me tell you what, the offensive line play, unbelievable. Penn State came into the game leading the Big Ten and was sixth in the country, Chris, with 24 sacks on the season. Ohio State in that offensive line only allowed 2. I mean, usually you don't want your quarterback to get sacked at all, but against a Penn State defense that was averaging those kind of sack stats, to only have allowed 2 for the whole game, dude, the offensive line played out of their mind. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you this. They provide a lot of pass protection, but JT needs it. If there's one complaint you want to say about JT, he doesn't get rid of that ball very fast. You know, he's back there like almost every play. He's doing his reads, and you know, it's a few seconds before he gets rid of the ball. And so he it's like a requirement that he has good pass protection. Where some other quarterbacks could just unload it fast, like you know, guys like Lego, you know, from Indiana and stuff like that versus Ohio State, knowing that they couldn't stop Ohio State's pass rush. They were just getting it out real fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not seen that from JT, where he's back there taking his sweet time. And, you know, we just got to hope that offensive line can keep providing protection like that because he requires it. So, but yeah.
Well, they played, an unbelievable game. I mean, after the game, Billy Price came out and sat down and gave a few minutes of you know, his time for interviews or, you know, quotes, whatever, fielding questions. As he was getting up, I mean, he grimaced. He was, he was beat up, and it's understandable why, because that offensive line just they played out of their minds. I mean, they played great.
Yeah, and in the run blocking game too, not just pass protection.
Exactly.
They were opening up some holes. I mean, there was one touchdown where, I mean, this was like, I forget which one it was, but I just remember they just blasted them off the side of the line. I mean, there was like this huge gap late in the game, and I'm like, how does like Penn State had to know it was coming, and it just didn't matter. They just moved them out of the way. You know, it was one of the biggest gaps I've seen in a goal line offense in a long time, and they were doing it versus Penn State. It wasn't versus Rutgers, you know.
Yeah, and that was one area that Penn State was a little lacking defensively, was their rush defense. They were like, I don't know, 5th or 6th in the Big Ten, you know, allowing about 115 yards a game. And like I said earlier, Buckeyes went for 201. Talking about the running game, though, once again, JT Barrett, 17 yards, 17 carries, 95 yards, leads the team in both of those categories.
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins, 13 carries, 88 yards. Weber had 7 for 21 and the 1 rushing score. However, were you a little flummoxed that J.K. Dobbins at one point, Chris, had 4 carries for 50 yards, and they took him out and they put Weber in? And it's like, what are you doing? Why? I understand that you want to make Mike Weber happy. I get it. Like, you want to cater to both of these guys. Mike Weber was your boy last year. Obviously, Dobbins is indeed the better tailback. But you still want to make both guys happy. But when a guy's kind of getting some momentum going, why are you going to pull him out and put the other guy in? Did you find that strange? Did you notice that? Or I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point in a big game like that, now it's one thing if you're playing Nebraska or, Rutgers and stuff like that, where Ohio State's having its way with them, and you just want to keep them fresh and not have them take too many hits. You rotate them in there almost carry for carry. But versus a Penn State, I'm of the opinion that the only time you see Mike Weber in there is maybe short yardage. If you think Mike Weber has a better chance at getting you that 1 yard than J.K., which frankly, I'm not so sure that that's even the case. I don't know that he really is more powerful because Mike Weber is not exactly Carlos Hyde or anything. He's not Christian Okoye back there. But
Christian Okoye, there's a name.
And he
was a beast too.
Yeah. One of my favorite Tecmo Bowl players. But
mine had to have been Bo Jackson, but
Bo Jackson was ridiculous.
Okoye was pretty good too.
It was just so funny that he would just it's just funny watching him stiff arm and pancake players, but
oh yeah.
Anyway, I mean, that's really like the only, he should have, so the breakdown was 17 for JT, 13 JK, 7 for Weber. I mean, it should be like, in a game like that, Weber should have had 4 or 5 carries. And JT should not have had 17. It should have been more like
Dobbins 20 or
Dobbins
25.
20. Right. Dobbins 20, Weber 5, maybe Barrett 5 to 10. That's really what it should have been. But the quarterback run is Urban Meyer's security blanket, and we can sit here and complain about it as much as we want. And we're probably just going to make ourselves miserable over that one. It's one of those cite the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept that which I cannot change, the courage to change that which I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, because it ain't changing.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, we just have to accept this for what it is, that Urban Meyer will rely on JT Barrett in these big games to lead the team on the ground, right. Which, hey, he still had, a great game. Obviously, you put your quarterback in that situation, though, too many times, you're risking, the percentage of injury goes up. And
quarterbacks have not exactly had a great track record for health since Urban Meyer came to Columbus. And, well, here's an interesting thought, Andy.
This is true, yeah.
Since he's been there, his quarterbacks have been one, Braxton Miller, J.T. Barrett, Cardale Jones. When Braxton Miller, especially Braxton Miller, but when Braxton and Joe Thomas were back there, the quarterback was running the ball a lot anytime the game was tight.
Yeah.
Cardale Jones, not so much. So let's just say next year Dwayne Haskins wins the job, and he's not the strong runner that we're used to seeing with Braxton Miller and Barrett. Maybe that's not the security blanket anymore, because with Cardale Jones in there, the security blanket was Zeke. So
that was a pretty good blanket to have.
That's true. But it's it'll be interesting to see what happens now if we go with Joe Burrow or Tate Martell. Those guys are pretty good runners, so I think we're probably still looking at more of the same when it comes to tight situations next year. But we'll see.
And shouldn't that, the way that Ohio State played with Cardale Jones and Zeke there the last 3 games of 14, kind of tell Urban, hey, we obviously Zeke a whole different level of running back. Mike Weber, not in Zeke's.
No, he can't tie Zeke's shoelaces.
No. I'm trying to think of a nice way to put it, but that's about where it's at. He can't even tie Zeke's shoes for him. JK, once again, better than Weber as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure as far as most people are concerned. But not quite Zeke-esque, at least not yet. I think Dobbins could get maybe sort of close.
Right. Well, I will say this about Dobbins. His style of running is very reminiscent of Zeke. It's like
shifty.
Yeah, I mean, if he's got speed, he's got he could run through some arm tackles. Maybe Zeke was a little better at running through arm tackles than JK, but not a lot better. It's not. JK is not small. I mean, he's basically the same size as like Emmitt Smith, and nobody really was sitting here talking about how Emmitt Smith was a small back, right?
Right.
And I mean, honestly, seriously, he's like the same size. So, but he has a similar style to Zeke. I don't think he's quite as good. It's like maybe he's like 95% of what Zeke was, 95% of what Zeke was, but otherwise kind of like the same player,
I do. I see shades of Zeke, and quite frankly, I almost see more shades out of Dobbins, and I think I've said this before, and we've talked about it. I see a lot of Maurice Claret in J.K. Dobbins. I do. I really do. I mean, he's Maurice Claret was like a bowling ball. I mean, he was kind of short and squat, but man, was he powerful. And you want to talk about someone who'd put their head down and blast into somebody.
Man.
Maurice Claret would do that, but Maurice Claret also had some moves. I mean, low center of gravity. Shifty, boy, you want to talk about somebody who could, juke and make somebody miss, and I see a lot of that out of J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah. I don't know. Claret had so much power, and I don't see the same level of power, so it's hard for me to think of him in the same light, but
I guess I see the moves as Maurice Claret-esque, but not the power.
Yeah. I guess I could see the shiftiness does remind me. He's like a lighter version of more, Claret. If he could just put some bricks in his pads, and go out there.
He's a brick.
Yeah.
Ow. Well, suffice it to say, though, dude, he's still. I have faith in putting the ball into Dobbins' hands and letting him go out there and run the ball and try and win the game. I would prefer to do that than let JT scramble around and possibly get hurt. But like you said, it's the security blanket. It's what Urban, loves to rely on. And I mean, when you got a guy like Barrett, I mean, that's obviously, you can understand why, because I mean, Barrett is going to go down as probably one of, if not the greatest quarterbacks in OSU history. And I mean, that's no joke. I mean, obviously, statistically speaking, he's already there in several categories. And one stat that I found interesting, Chris, coming into yesterday, he had been averaging like a little over 313 yards a game, okay? If for the final 5 games of the season, he can average 330 yards per game, he is going to pass Drew Brees as being the all-time leader in total offense in the Big Ten. And, of course, last night, I mean, he put up, 423? So, you got a guy like that.
330 is a lot, but then again, he does run a lot,
Yeah, I mean,
if it was 330 passing alone, I would be like, that's not going to happen. But 330 total?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, for him to have put up 328 yards passing and only have thrown 6 incomplete passes, 4 of which were drops, I mean, that was just – seriously, that performance last night, dude, was one for the ages. Now, I don't know about if you know about this, but that 423 yards of total offense is now the single-game total offense record in Ohio State history. He passed up Art Schleister's record that Schleister set against Florida State in 1981 of 412.
Wow.
So now I mean, we keep talking about this, Chris. It's like every week we're talking about Barrett breaking a new record.
Unbelievable.
As you stated earlier, 91 touchdown passes for the Big Ten now record with touchdown passes, and he sets a single-game OSU record with 423 yards of total offense. I mean, a buddy of mine, the Triple R, Ryan Rossrohr, texted me, and he said something great, and I was like, you know what, dude? That is spot on. For all the flack that JT Barrett has taken this year, and you said it earlier, I mean, even after the Oklahoma game, and he's being criticized. Well, he's doing this against subpar defenses, and, you know, I still want to see Dwayne Haskins. He's the better quarterback. He's the better thrower. And I myself, as I continue to munch on this big play to Crow, because I said JT Barrett is not a pocket passing quarterback, and to ask him to sit back in the pocket and throw and win the football game is not a feasible idea. For all of that criticism and flack that he has taken up to this point in the year, we as Buckeye fans don't deserve him as our quarterback. And I was like, you know what, dude? That's a pretty spot-on statement right there. And I really do. I think that, you know, myself included, we have to take a step back and understand and realize that what this dude has done, and another guy, my father, Doug Evans, said the same thing. He said, you know, for him to have taken all of this criticism and flack, it's just not fair. Look at what the kid has done. And if last night's game honestly didn't shut people up, myself included, then we're just, you know, the same damn fickle Ohio State fans, and nothing will ever be good enough for us.
And speaking of nothing ever being good enough for us, I've got 2 rants that I want to get in before the show's over.
Uh-oh. Here we need a breaking news sounder. Here we go, folks.
And now it's time for the Intergalactic Buckeye Fans Buckeye Leafcast Rant.
It's the Intergalactic Buckeye Fans Rant of the podcast. All right, brother. I can't wait to hear this. Lay it on me.
All right, so the bubble screen, these little passes to the side, right?
Yep.
It's a staple of Urban Meyer's offense. He does them a lot, but here's my problem with them. They only work versus inferior athletes. So it works great when you're playing the weaker opponents, but when you're going against athletes that are just as good, it doesn't work. This going to this. So, you know, it reminds me of I'm a Cleveland Cavalier fan, right? And so the Cleveland Cavaliers are like heads and shoulders above everybody in the Eastern Conference. They've gone to the Eastern Conference Finals 3 years in a row, and last year they like almost swept their way to the finals. But now when they get to the finals, they face the Golden State Warriors, who are, you know, better than them. Cleveland has the ability to win a series if they get lucky, you know, like they were able to do 2 years ago. But they need a lot of breaks to fall their way. Sure. And a lot of what Cleveland does to run through the East is they use strategies that don't really work well versus Golden State. And so then when they play Golden State, they got to switch up and do a different strategy. And so what I've been harping on with the Cavaliers is I'm like, you know what? Why not just run your offense to be your offense is all stuff that works great versus Golden State. You're still, I mean, you swept your way through the freaking East. You're still going to be able to go through the East without doing these other plays. Just work on by running the plays that work versus Golden State. Run the plays that work versus Golden State. Get really good at those, and then when you're playing them, it'll be your comfort zone. That'll be your offense, right? Rather than doing these things that don't work at all. Like you spend over half your time all year long doing stuff that doesn't work versus Golden State, when that's the only thing you need to worry about. So, and then I'm sitting there looking at Ohio State. They don't need to worry about beating Rutgers and Army or even Nebraska, for God's sakes. They can run pretty much whatever they want and still do. They can run plays that this is going to work really well versus Penn State. And beat, you know, the Armies and Rutgers and Marylands and all of that, right? So, but these bubble screens don't work. So in my mind, like, why are they even out there? They shouldn't. Yes, they work great versus Maryland. Whoop-de-doo. They don't work. They don't work versus Penn State. They don't work when, you know, versus the Clemsons of the world. We saw this. I mean, it was blown up. So I'm going to break down for you these little horizontal passes. Oh. These bubble screens. I tracked every one of them.
This is what I look forward to, your in-depth analysis. Yeah. I love it.
So I could give you what every single one was, but I won't because there's 11 of them. They did it 11 times, Andy. 11. So
they were throwing out to the flat an awful lot last night.
So, yeah, 79 total plays, 11 of them out in the flat. That's 14%.
Wow.
How did they do on these plays? Okay. One of them was a fumble, the Paris Campbell fumble.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was an incomplete pass, which was horribly incomplete, overthrowing Weber. I was like, what are you freaking kidding? You know, that's like the good thing about those plays is they're supposed to be really accurate, right? 6, count them, 6, over at 11 total, 6 of them, not including the fumble, not including the incomplete pass, 6 of them were completed for negative yards. 6 of them for negative.
Wow.
Total out of 11 total plays, Andy. They had one fumble, an incomplete pass, 6 total yards, 6 for an average of 0.54 yards per play, and they did it 11 times.
Oh my gosh!
What are you doing? Why are you running this play over and over and over again? And you know, like the counter argument here is this. So, the counter argument is, you know, like we were talking about earlier, you know, Ohio State can't take away everything when they're on defense. Penn State can't take away everything when they're on defense. And so if you force Penn State to have to defend out wide like that, it opens up other stuff. So you mix it in so that like then maybe the middle of the fields open up or the running game or this, you know, it's you're going to attack out wide, you're going to attack up the middle, you're going to attack deep, you're going to attack to the, you know, widen out, you want to make them defend the entire field. Okay. I can buy that argument, but not 11 times. Not 11. You know, maybe you put it out there 3 or 4 times a game, and if Penn State just gives it to you and says, you know, like they're like, we're not even going to worry about it, and you're able to get 5-6 yards per play, hey, then go ahead, do it 11 times. But when you're getting 0.54 yards per play, you're going to do it 11 times? Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah, right.
And to be honest, the very last. So here's the thing. Do you know how many yardage they had through 10 times?
No, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me.
Through 10, the very last one, the 11th play, went for 9 yards. It was the best. They say the best for last. The 11th time they ran it, they got 9 yards. But that means through 10 times running it, they had a grand total of -3 yards. And they still continued to do it. You know what I mean? It's like,
really?
Yeah,
Gosh,
they had -3 after 10.
That's surprising. Yeah, well, once again, this is why you are who you are, and you break this stuff down. This is stuff that just the average football fan and viewer does not pick up on. And I didn't pick up on it, quite frankly. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it was sitting there, and it's something it's been bugging me for a while now, and it just had never come up before. And so that's why from the very beginning of the game I started tracking it, because I was like, all right, yeah, these were cute and all when we were playing Army. This isn't funny versus Penn State. You know, as we're sitting there watching like Mike Weber he had one for -7 yards. He had another one for -5.
Wow.
Hill,
you know what,
one of our top receivers, he had one for -5.
I look at the stats on Weber and I'm like, this dude caught 5 passes for only 9 yards. Like, I don't remember him not gaining. Like, I remember a couple of passes.
He lost 12 on two plays. He lost 12 yards.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, rant number 1. So give me rant number 2.
All right, this one will be shorter, I promise. We've harped on the special teams. We didn't harp on one specific thing because on the surface, nothing went wrong in this area, and that's the kicking game. And I'm talking about field goals and extra points. There was no missed field goals, no missed extra points, which has been a problem early in the year. But you know what didn't happen? 20-yard line. 4th and 8. Not 4th and 1, not 4th and 2, not even 4th and 3. 4th and 8, Andy. 20-yard line. One, Urban F. Meyer goes for it.
I knew that's where you were going with this.
Because he has no faith in his kicker and does not get it. So there's like 20. That's a 37-yard field goal. You should be able to get a 37-yard field goal in your sleep if you're kicking for Ohio State and it's not in the middle of a monsoon. You know, that's not even a decision. You don't even have to think about that. You just automatically send the kicker out there.
What yard line were they on again?
20-yard line.
They were on Penn State's 20, and when they went for it on 4th and 8?
4th and 8. I was furious.
Wow.
I kind of got it because I'm like, hey, you know, you're right. He's probably going to miss it. You probably got a better shot going for it on 4th and 8. But I'm like, I was furious that is the hand we've been dealt. That they have been so bad at place kicking at either one, getting the personnel. You either did a bad job getting the right personnel on the team, or 2, getting them ready to do it, training them up, whatever it is you need to do to get a kicker ready. Whatever it is, you failed. If on 4th and 8 at the 20-yard line, you feel like you got to go for it. That's not acceptable.
Well, it wasn't. Was it? What was the score at that point? Was that 14-0?
They were down a couple touchdowns.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was early. It's not like it was the fourth quarter. This was like the second quarter, maybe third. But it was.
I think it was early in the game.
It was early.
I'm thinking, it was like second quarter, and it was like 14-0 what I'm.
Yeah, I mean, there was no reason at that point to do. I mean, they've come back from down a couple touchdowns before. I'm thinking of Alabama in 2014. JT Barrett has been in that situation before. There was the right call in that situation was you kick the field goal every time, assuming you have a competent kicker, and apparently we don't, because that's not what they did.
See, I've got a little more faith in Sean Nurnberger that he can kick a 37-yarder. I think at that point, Urban was just trying to establish some momentum, and he felt kicking a field goal was not going to do it, and they needed to do something at that point in the game to kind of take it back because they were getting worked. That's what I saw that as. Am I wrong? I mean,
who knows? Unless we ask Urban that, you should ask him that in the presser. Andy, you're failing me now. This is why I have you go to those damn things. I'm in North Carolina. I do it myself.
Well, here's the thing, though. Just because you're in the interview room doesn't guarantee that you're going to get picked to ask a question. I'll just put that out there right now. I have gotten lucky, but there's a sports information director that is in the room standing next to Urban, and I'm sure you've seen him before. And you look at him. You don't look at Urban. Urban doesn't pick you. The sports information director picks you. And quite frankly, either if you get your hand raised in time for him to pick you, and I have raised my hand. In fact, I raised my hand when JT was up at the podium. I wanted to ask JT a question, and the sports information director saw me, but sometimes there's time constraints and whatever other factors might go into it that you're just not lucky enough to get picked and ask a question. So I will put that out there. So I am kind of creating an excuse for myself.
Here's what you do. I'm holding you accountable for this. You need to figure out what his, does he like chocolates? What's his favorite beer? Something like that. You need to hook that guy up. You need to get on a first name basis with him. When when you walk by, Andy, how you doing? Good to see you, brother. That's what you need to do. Make it happen.
All right. I'm gonna try my damnedest.
Enough of these excuses.
Okay. All right. You're right. I should be ashamed of myself. My bad. Oh man. Well, so yes, I guess if there's anything we can critique about yesterday's performance, those are definitely a couple. Of course, special teams, as we stated, still a cluster. I do still have faith in Drew Chrisman. I know what you're saying. Yes, he bobbled that snap. I thought, though, he punted his way out of that a lot better than what could have happened. But he's still young. He's still getting his footing. I got faith that Drew Chrisman is going to be a good punter down the road. But once again, though, special teams, though, Chris, it's not – Urban doesn't care, okay? He does not care about special teams, okay? He does not want to bring the kicker out to get points on the board, where Jim Tressel would have been like, hey, points on the board, that's better than nothing. Urban's like, screw you, I want 7, not 3. So, Sean, just keep sitting on the bench, warm your little tush up there on this nice chilly day. We're just going to keep the offense out on the field.
And that'll conclude part 1 of the Buckeye Leafcast.